Howdy y'all, welcome back to my channel. It's K-Fiercene, and in today's video, I'm going to be giving you a console cancelization video tutorial. So make sure to hit that subscribe button if you enjoy Palia content, especially if you play on console. It really helps me out. I'm trying to get up to 2,000 subscribers, so everybody helps. I'd really appreciate it. And give this video a thumbs up and, share it with all your other friends who play on console so that they can learn how to do some cool things with decorating as well. And without further ado, let's go ahead and get into this, shall we? So the first thing you want to do, now this does probably vary. I don't actually play on Xbox or PlayStation, but from what I can tell, from what I've talked to other people, this should work the same. So what I went to is I went to my settings, and then I went all the way back here to the controller up here, and then I went over to controls, okay? And you'll want to go down to your action bar item use, okay? This button is maybe regularly set to A, and what we want to do is we want to change that. Or, it might be like X for PlayStation, I assume. Either way, you don't want this button being the button that it's used because it's going to interfere with a lot of other things. You want to use it, you want to change it to a button that you're not going to normally use. So here, I'm going to change it on my Switch to my plus button. That is basically kind of like your start or select button for PlayStation or Xbox, I assume. So you'll probably want to use a button like that. As I said, it's not going to be a button that you're going to regularly use when decorating, because the plus button, the only thing it does is open up your menu, and it actually doesn't do that when you're doing all of this. So it's a free action button that gives us an extra button to use. So that's why we actually put that as the plus button. That does change a bit how you play the games when you're going to be planting seeds or trying to plant things or place items. You're going to have to use that button. So it will change the way you do it, but it allows you to do some cool tricks. So for the first example, this is kind of like my basic setup I have. If you have a setup like this, you can pretty much float or sink most anything, because this is going to be the first thing I'm going to teach y'all is how to float an item. So basically, when you float an item, you're going to have what's called an anchor item. In this case, I want it to be a paver, okay? So, because these I will have all around my plot, so I know if I float anything connected to it, I can still fit it into the decoration, and nobody will really see an anchor, and I don't have to hide an anchor, so to speak, okay? So that's why I like these. If you're doing something bigger, like a flooring works fine, you can use a fish tank, anything that you can put something on top of, you can make an anchor. As I said, the pavers are my favorites. So, and this is where the trick comes in. This is where the main part of the trick comes in that people have difficulty with. And once you get the button press, it's a lot easier. So you want to jump, and and now for Switch users, it's the B button. I don't know what your jump button is for Xbox or PlayStation, but it's your jump button. And when you jump twice, you bring out your glider, okay? So you're doing BB. So if you do it real quick after you press your glider, you can press the Y button when you're in decorating mode. Sorry, I was like, why is this not working? Anyway, when you're in decorating mode and you press it, and then you press A while you're in the air, you see how we're like stuck in this weird limbo right now, where I can now move things on my bar, but I'm still connected here, and if I press A, nothing happens. If I press B, nothing happens. Like, I'm stuck with this item over here that's connected to me freely, okay? This is when you're in your item canceling mode, okay? So you want to make sure you get into that mode where you have it like this and you can move it. And now basically wherever this was original standpoint, it will eventually move back to this spot, okay? So when you're moving this, as I said, I have this little thing built. When you're moving this, you can, this will be as far away from that starting point will be the item that you're floating. For instance, for us, we're going to be floating these plushies. So I'm going to press the plus button, and then press the B button. So if you had it set to the start button, you would press the start button, then your B button or whatever your cancel button is on PlayStation and Xbox. For the Switch, it's the B button. So as you can see, I'm going to do that one more time, a bit more slower. So we're going to bring this right back down here. And we are going to BBA. And now we have this in our item cancelization mode. So now we're going to run up here and we're going to place this on the second tier to float this. Okay, so now that we're here, I'm going to press the plus button on an item that can be placed. It doesn't have to be the item you want to float, but it just kind of makes it easier in the process. So you click the item you want to float and you're just going to press the plus or start button. And then you're going to press your B or cancel button, okay? So now we're in this mode. As you can see, this one is sitting up here and it's not on the ground. So now what we're going to do is now that we have this here, we are going to place our Mugen plushie right on top of the paver so that it is connected to the paver, okay? And now once we get to this point, we'll grab our paver and you can literally move your paver wherever you want. And then voila, because if we move this back into spot, you can see this is where it started and this is where it ended. So you can see exactly how far away, how high you want to place it away from your anchor. And now you just move the paver and you can move this little floating guy wherever you want, you know? Now we got him up here hanging out on the fence edge right here, you know? And that is what's called item floating. You can float pretty much any item. You can float food, you can float gems, you can float pretty much most any item that you can place on top of a paver. As I said, there are some items you have to do a different kind for, but that's for a different video. I'll link those probably in the description though. Okay, so the next part we're going to talk about is what's called item syncing. Now, I'm going to show you guys a bit of an exaggerated an example, but just so you guys can see. And you can sync a lot of things. There's a lot of things you may want to sync out there. But just the easiest one I like to use is just any flooring, any actual big flooring. That'll work for most any items. If you're doing like a plushie or something, you know, these work. But when in doubt, always just go with a big old floor. These big old wooden floors or metal floors are great. You just gotta, you know, maybe hide them under some flowers or something. But when we're item canceling, you want to make sure that you're, you know, you want it lifted up off the ground because, you know, you want it higher up. The higher up you do it is, the more you sink it though. So, you know, we're basically kind of doing like a reversal of floating. Think of it as that way. So I'm gonna tilt my camera up just to ensure that when I jump, I'm going to be picking up the iron floor. Because if I'm too far back and I jump up, it might have me pick up this back wall. As you can see, it changes. And if I pick all of this up, then that won't do, right? So what we're going to do is I'm going to come up here and I'm going to focus and jump to where it's just clicking on this big metal floor. And I'm just going to do the item cancel for the Switch. It's the BBA, you know, it's whatever yours is. So now we have it in this mode. And similar to the way the other one was, the further away you move this, the further away the item you sync is going to be from it. So we're going to put ours a little bit further forward. You know, we want to hide it a bit. and we want to place it a bit further out. So now we're just going to place the item we want to sink, and then we're going to press B or cancel. And now we have this thing kind of sitting here by itself. So now we're going to now place the item we want to sink on top of it like so. So now that we have our item sitting on top of our flooring, we're going to grab our flooring and just move it a little bit. You can literally move it anywhere. And as you can see, this thing is now sunken into the ground. And as you can see how far it's sunken by, if I pick it up, you can see the height difference, This is it then, this is it now, So, and that is how to sink an item. Now, the reason why we actually have a shelf here on the wall is because there are some fun things that you can do. So, one of the fun things you can do with floating and sinking is actually turning an object. So, what we're going to do is we're going to, once we have our anchor put onto the shelf, we are going to target the shelf. Sometimes you got to get the right angle. Sometimes it can be a little tricky. We're going to target the shelf and we're just going to rotate it. So you're going to do whatever your rotate button is. For me, it's my R button. And then we're going to place it. So now we have this, kind of sideways. So now what we're going to do is we're going to do the same item, the same trick we've done the last 2 times, where you make sure I'm focused on my anchor here. And when I jump up, it's always going to stay on my anchor. So we're going to do the BBA or whatever yours is. And we're going to then go a bit higher up because we definitely want this to float so it can be seen easier. So we're going to go to our highest point and we're going to take our plushie we want to float. And we're going to use our plus button or your start button to place the item and then press B to cancel. So now we have placed the paver. We are no longer moving the paver. And now we're just going to place our plushie on top. So we're going to press that plus button or the start button. And then I'm going to press my A button or I assume your X button. And that has that placed. So now once we have that placed on there, we're just going to move this back onto the ground. And as you can see, he's now moved this way. Now, one trick to note about doing this is depending on which way you place them will depend on which part of it actually rotates. So to do this one more time, we're going to place our anchor on our shelf. And now we're going to rotate the shelf the same amount. And we're going to, put it a little closer to the ground. And now we're going to make sure that we can focus in on it and just on it when we jump. And we're going to do our item cancel trick. And sometimes, this happens and you grab the shelf. That's why I said you got to be careful on where you're jumping. I'm gonna leave that in so you guys can see. Sometimes that happens. I wasn't too careful on where I was jumping. So now as you can see, I'm not gonna target that shelf. So now I can item cancel and now I pick this up instead. Now we're gonna move this back up here and we are going to place the next plushie we want to place. We're going to now use our plus start button to place it and then B to cancel. And now that we're here, we're going to place our plushie. Now, last time we placed it like this. This time we're going to rotate it this way. So now we have it facing a completely different direction. So now once we bring this down to the ground, you can see it's now it's now rotating a different direction. Put these boys side by side each other. You can see they're rotating very different directions here. And that was just because of the way we placed them after you had placed the paver. So that is also very important and something cool, depending on how you want them to be maneuvered or whatever. Okay? And so that covers sinking and floating things on their sides. So now I'm going to show you one of the other big tricks, which are called item merging. And one of my favorite uses for item merging is hiding these blocks, okay? So as you can see, I have this one. I have it one block off this line and one block off the back side, so I know where it is. It's very important you know where these are because your placement does have to be precise with this trick, but it's still cool nonetheless. So, and I put this flooring here so I can kind of help line it up for my future. Then I can just move it later if I so desire. So what we're going to do is we're going to item cancel this chest, okay? So we're going to item cancel, and then we're going to move this chest. And I'm going to use this starred food I have that I've been using for focus. But you can use any item you can place, a plushie or whatever. I'm going to use the star food, press the plus button, and then I'm going to press the B button, just like we did with the other trick. Now, we're not going to touch this. This is going to be left right here. What we're now going to do is we're going to pick this up, and I'm going to try to get it lined up just right so that it goes exactly where I want it to go. There we go. So now that we have that into place, we're going to hop over to a different plot. And then we're just going to hop back over to... I'm not going to open the store, that's for true. But we're going to hop back over to the plot we were just on. And as you can see, my placement was a little off, so if you want, we'll redo it real quick. But as you can see, it's still right there. So, and that's the thing you got to learn. This does take a bit of practice, is why I'm very much so you got to follow the grid. So now we're just going to do 2 blocks out and 1 block over. So now we're basically 2 blocks out and 1 block over, okay? So now we're just going to item cancel again, and we're going to place this. And now that we have this over here, we're going to grab this and we're going to line it up a bit better. There we go. And now that we have that lined up, we're going to hop back over to a different plot. And then we're gonna pop back over. Now if you're doing this trick, you might have to do this a couple of times. But now as you can see, you can't even see the chest there, and now I can walk up here and I can still access my chest. And now I've made this lovely makeshift indoor garden into a chest that I can get my storage out of, and I can access my storage, and it's nice and politely hidden away, you know? That's just a fun example that you can use with this. So hopefully this helps everybody out, and hopefully you're able to do some more advanced decorating on your console, whether you're Xbox or PlayStation or Switch or Switch 2 like myself. So thank you guys for hanging out in today's video. I'm gonna see you guys later. Bye!